Finn Hastings had always prided himself on his meticulous attention to detail, on the way he could piece together even the smallest clue to reveal a hidden truth. But nothing in his years as a cardiothoracic surgeon or as the husband of Steffi Forrester could have prepared him for the discovery he stumbled upon late one evening in Grace Buckingham's private medical archive. It began innocuously enough. Finn had agreed to help Grace sort through decades of patient files while she prepared to retire from her practice, unaware that she harbored secrets deeper than any graft or valve replacement he had ever performed. But when he accidentally knocked over a small stack of manila envelopes stamped with Grace's elegant script, one slipped free and fluttered to the floor, its paper faintly yellowed with age. Curiosity piqued, Finn unfolded the document and froze at the heading. Anonymous Sperm Donor Agreement. His heart pounded even before he read Grace's carefully penned notes, the legal boilerplate guaranteeing absolute confidentiality to the donor, with no mention of identity. No hint of motive beyond a clinical statement that the sperm was to be used for in vitro fertilization for a woman who, by the date on the document, was soon to become a mother. Finn's mind raced. He knew Grace as a perfectionist, a woman of science and propriety. But what prompted such a contract? The clinic's records log offered no further clues. The donor was never identified by name, and Grace's personal notes made no reference to a father figure in the life of that child. Yet Grace's handwriting alone told Finn that this document had been more than a formality. Her annotations in the margins, tiny stars next to key passages, suggested an emotional investment that went beyond professional duty. Driven by an inexplicable pull, Finn pocketed the contract and later that night, alone in his study, ran a discreet search of Grace's patient records, cross-referencing dates and appointments until one name kept surfacing, Paris Buckingham. The woman Grace had mentored, the daughter of the British tycoon Alexander Buckingham who had vanished from Paris's life years ago. A chill ran down Finn's spine as he retrieved Paris's file. The birth date aligned perfectly with the timeline of the donor contract, and medical records included notes about Grace's involvement in Paris's conception, always chalked up to research rather than obstetric care. Finn's pulse accelerated. If Paris had been conceived via anonymous donor sperm, and if that donor was someone of significance, the implications could ripple through families, boardrooms, and the most guarded corners of Los Angeles society. He leaned back in his chair, mind racing through the possibilities. Would Grace have kept such a secret to protect Paris? Or was there something more deliberate behind the anonymity? He resolved to investigate DNA first, discreetly, to confirm whether Paris's genetic markers matched anyone in the Buckingham or Forrester networks, but also to uncover any link to the man who, in Finn's deepest suspicions, might be more than a distant donor. Bill Spencer. Finn knew Bill as the ruthless media magnate whose empire overshadowed nearly every business in town, a man whose public persona pivoted between charming patron and aggressive dealmaker. If Bill was Paris's biological father, the news would shatter the Spencer dynasty and redefine Paris's identity overnight. The next day, after an especially grueling double shift in the OR, Finn arranged for a discreet blood draw from Paris under the guise of routine follow-up tests for her chronic allergy condition. He also secured a vial of Bill Spencer's blood from the hospital's lab. Bill had been admitted briefly for elective cardiac screening and, at Finn's request, a small sample had been retained. Weeks later, in the solitude of Grace's lab, where he had keys as her longtime colleague, Finn ran polymerase chain reactions, extracted DNA, and compared genetic markers side by side. When the readouts glowed on his monitor, confirming a match so precise that the statistical probability of error was less than 1 in a billion, Finn paused, hand hovering over the keyboard. Paris Buckingham, beloved daughter of Grace's protégé and granddaughter of British finance royalty, was no less than Bill Spencer's child. He stared at the names side by side on the screen, Paris Buckingham, and William Spencer, and felt a gravity pull at his chest. He knew he should tell Steffi. He should tell Liam or Wyatt, perhaps even Paris herself, but the storm that would follow could engulf all of them, destroy Steffi's fragile peace amid her own family turmoil, and pit brother against brother in a battle over Spencer Publications. So Finn waited. Meanwhile, Paris went about her days unaware that her lifelong search for identity was poised to end in upheaval. She continued her lectures at the university, her charity gala appearances, her late-night dinners with Wyatt and Liam Spencer. She felt at home among the Spencers even though her bloodline lay elsewhere. A mystery Grace had promised would reveal itself when the time was right. Yet Paris sensed change in the air. Grace's whisper in the hallway, the furtive glances of her lab assistants, the way Finn had seemed more distant, more haunted in recent weeks. One evening, after a long charity event, Paris returned to the Buckingham estate to find Finn waiting on the marble veranda, the moonlight casting deep shadows on his solemn face. He held out 2 envelopes. One contained the original donor contract, its yellowed paper brittle in her hands. The other bore printed DNA readouts labeled PB and W\S. Paris's breath caught as she read the headings, then lifted her gaze to Finn's eyes, which shone with both apology and resolve. He said nothing as the truth slammed into her, a daughter of Bill Spencer. The revelation devastated her sense of self, turning her definitions of family and loyalty inside out in a single heartbeat. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "My father." "Bill Spencer." Finn nodded, swallowing hard and prepared to lay out the staggering proof, the decades of secrets, the reckoning that would follow. But Paris interrupted, her tears blurring his vision. "I need time." She retreated into the house, leaving Finn alone to wrestle with the consequences of his discovery. News of Paris's paternity threatened to erupt into public scandal at any moment, and it was Justin Barber, Bill Spencer's ever-watchful attorney, who sensed the vortex forming before anyone else. Justin had long navigated the family's legal minefields with unflappable composure, but when Quinn Carpenter tipped him off about an anonymous whisper in the Spencer lobby, someone had seen Finn carrying Grace Buckingham's contract. The wheels of justice turned in his mind. Justin, whose loyalty to Bill was matched only by his own ambition, realized that control of this secret meant ultimate leverage. He marched into Quinn's artfully minimalist loft, where she awaited, her eyes sparkling at the prospect of using the bombshell to her advantage. In exchange for Quinn's silence on past grievances and a share in whatever fortune Bill would dole out to contain the scandal, Justin agreed to take possession of Grace's contract and to initiate discreet inquiries into Paris's medical records, all the while assuring Bill that he was the only one who could be relied upon to manage this crisis. When Justin presented the contract and DNA proof to Bill Spencer in his glass-walled office overlooking downtown Los Angeles, Bill's normally unshakable demeanor cracked. He stared at the evidence like a man watching his empire crumble. His child, born in secret, raised as another family's daughter, now poised to demand inheritance rights, a public acknowledgement, perhaps even a board seat at Spencer Publications. Justin leaned in, voice low and measured, spelling out the terms. Fund a trust for Paris with $500 million, appoint Justin as special counsel endowed with absolute confidentiality and veto power over any public disclosure, or face the alternative, a paternity lawsuit that would dominate tabloids, destroy stock prices, invite congressional scrutiny of his media holdings, and stain the Spencer name irrevocably. Bill clenched his fists until his knuckles whitened, the weight of Justin's ultimatum hanging in the room like a guillotine. Meanwhile, Wyatt and Liam Spencer, who had grown up vying for their father's approval, felt the ground shift beneath them. Unaware of the details, but sensing that whispers in the corporate halls spelled disaster, The brothers confronted each other in the marble foyer of Spencer Publications, voices hushed but urgent. Wyatt paced, running a hand through his hair, fracturing the calm image he always presented to investors. I heard from one of Papa's assistants. Something about Grace Buckingham, donor contracts, and DNA, he said, eyes wide with alarm. Liam let out a short laugh that lacked humor. So we have a sister now? A daughter born out of wedlock? How many more skeletons does Dad have lurking in his closets? Wyatt stopped pacing and turned to his brother, face pale. If Dad acknowledges her, she inherits everything. We'd be cut out, me, you. Even Mom's stake in the company could be diluted. Liam's jaw clenched. And if he doesn't acknowledge her, she sues and drags us through the mud anyway. It's a lose-lose. Their rivalry dissolved in shared panic as they realized that the empire their father had built might slip through their fingers, not because of a hostile takeover, but because of the simplest biological truth: blood matters more than shareholders. As the sun set on another day of corporate maneuvering, the Spencer mansion hummed with tension. Bill hovering over Justin's shoulder as he drafted the trust agreement, Paris retreating to Grace's old study to reread the donor contract in search of loopholes, Finn pacing the corridors of the Buckingham Clinic, haunted by the knowledge that his discovery could save or destroy lives. And above it all, the question lingered like a specter. Would love and loyalty survive when tested by the most primal bonds of family, or would the bold and the beautiful witness a fracture so deep that no amount of wealth or influence could mend it? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: nothing in Los Angeles would ever be the same again. Paris Buckingham's return to Los Angeles felt like stepping into a storm he had summoned himself. She stepped off the private jet with a single carry-on, her shoulders squared against the late afternoon glare, her heart pounding with every flash of cameras and whisper down the jetway. Reporters clamored for a statement, their microphones thrust toward her, and she offered a calm, measured nod. I'm here to see my father. No more, no less. In that moment, the world contracted to the narrow ribbon of red carpet beneath her heels, and the name on the marquee waiting at the other end. Spencer Publications headquarters. As Paris entered the gleaming lobby, its marble floors polished so thoroughly she could see her reflection, security parted for her silently, their badges glinting in the recessed lights. Word of her arrival had spread ahead. Board members exchanged anxious glances at their mahogany desks, assistants paused in hallways, and Wyatt and Liam Spencer emerged from opposite wings, their haste betraying their nerves. Paris allowed herself only a fraction of a smile as she passed them. There would be time for brotherly reconciliations later, when she'd secured her place. For now, her focus was singular: Bill Spencer. He awaited her in his corner office, which overlooked the city skyline like a king surveying his realm, holding the thick binder Justin had prepared, the sheets of legalese inside promising recognition, inheritance, and the right to call him Dad. Paris paused in the doorway, closing her eyes as a rush of memories and unwritten possibilities swept over her. The fairs where she'd wondered at the crowd's absence of her likeness, the silent hospital hallways where she'd felt inexplicable loss, the mentor's reassuring smile from Grace Buckingham. And now this. Bill rose from behind his monumental desk, once the epitome of power and control, now a man stripped bare by the undeniable truth of blood. His tailored suit fell open slightly as he stretched out an unsteady hand. Paris. The single word held worlds: apology and pride, fear and hope. She stepped forward, lifted his hand, and placed it against her cheek, a daughter's touch that bypassed protocol. Hello, father. His other hand went to his chest, as though to still the wild beat beneath. He began, then closed his eyes, as if to summon the words that might bridge decades of silence. Paris waited, the silence between them thick with unspoken pain and untested promise. At last he spoke, voice low and taut, I am so sorry. Tears welling in her eyes, Paris shook her head, stern, resolute. We don't have time for sorrow. We have time for truth. She drew in a steadying breath and gestured toward the leather chair opposite his desk. I've read the terms. I know there's a trust fund waiting and a place on the board. But I'm not here for money or power. Bill's brow furrowed. Then I'm here because I need a father. Paris met his gaze squarely. I need to know you. Not as Mr. Spencer, the titan of industry, but as Bill. I want lunches without lawyers, outings without bodyguards. I want you to come to my world and I'll come to yours. Bill's gaze softened, the fortress he'd built around his heart showing the first crack. He leaned forward, fingertips touching hers across the desk. I want that too. Outside the office, Wyatt and Liam hovered in the hallway, watching from behind frosted glass. They saw Paris's confident posture, Bill's repentant expression, and the first true thought of paternal warmth bloom between them. Where once had been tension, they sensed a fragile peace forming. Wyatt stepped back, exchanging a look with Liam, whose tight shoulders eased fractionally. They would have their battles another day. Today marked a new beginning. Down in the lobby, Grace Buckingham waited by the elevators, flanked by Finn Hastings and Dr. Justin Barber. Grace's eyes filled with tears as she saw Paris emerge, hand in hand with Bill, no longer strangers but father and daughter forging their bond under the bright Los Angeles sun. Finn let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, and Justin allowed himself the smallest, most genuine smile he had given in months. Paris glanced over her shoulder, catching Grace's eye, and offered a nod of gratitude. In that instant, all the secrets, the betrayals, and the legal maneuverings fell away, replaced by something far more powerful. The doors of the elevator closed on them, carrying Paris into the next chapter of her life, one where she belonged, at last, with the man who had unknowingly shaped her future long before she knew who he was. And as Los Angeles lights flickered on beneath the dusk sky, the bold and the beautiful world held its breath, ready for the story of a daughter reclaimed, a father redeemed, and a family reborn.